Hello, listener. It's your dynamic duo of creativity and co-hosts, Chris.
And Rick. Today on the show, we have Brianna, the artist behind Oni Cake, a Dallas-based artist-owned brand that makes apparel, plush, enamel pins, and all sorts of other super kawaii accessories. Welcome, listeners, to another episode of Origins, a Creative Journey. We are joined today with Brianna from Oni Cake. Welcome to the show, Brianna.
Hi, I'm happy to be here. Really, really nice to meet you guys officially.
Great. Yeah, great to meet you as well. And so we will start the show the same way we start every show, which is the question, would you please share with us your origin story? Tell us your creative journey of how you got to where you are.
Well, my beginnings kind of started off a little rough with me getting in trouble with the principal because I started selling snacks at school and they weren't healthy snacks. Okay, I would use my allowance, I'd go to the dollar store, I'd buy like the packs of like chips and like candy and stuff, and then I'd mark it up at school and sell it back to kids who like their parents wouldn't buy them like the snacks. And our school was like healthy, like health program. I forgot like what it's called, but they were like eat an apple every day and like eat, fruits and vegetables. And I was like, you want some Cheetos? I got you. Just check my backpack. So I started there, got in trouble. They were like, you can't do this. It goes against like the school's agenda, basically. And I was like, gosh, how am I gonna start, making money off of, my talents, which apparently were like grifting kids at school. But I was like, there has to be something else I can do. And so I came up with like this idea somehow of starting to sell like custom signatures. And so I would like make a sign like for your name, and then I like draw a butterfly or like your animal of choosing around it. And like I got like those, those marker sets that like people kind of now like they kind of rag on it. I think they're still cool where you get like the color pencils and like the crayons and the markers. Like I had one of those. So like I had like the oil pastels and stuff. So I was like, I'm good. I have the technology. I can make money off of this. And it actually worked. Like I started like selling, it was like $5. Kids were buying these for $5. It was on printer paper. It's great. I to this day still use the signature that I came up with in that class. It was so funny. And I see it's like on my driver's license, and I'm just like, this is how I started selling art. From there, I kind of like moved on. I didn't, continue to do this because I ended up moving schools and I moved a lot growing up. Uh, my grandparents actually taught English in Korea. So I spent a lot of my time kind of in different areas of Seoul and Daejeon, Busan, and just moving around because of that. And my grandmother was an educator for my whole life. So even when we were in the States, we would move because she had to go to like whatever school district or thing we moved her to. My mother, she worked for UNICEF. So I couldn't always live with her depending on like where she was stationed, basically. So I would kind of go back and forth between my grandparents and my mom, and then like my aunt and uncle, because it just depending on like where people were positioned for like what they had to do. But because of this, I just grew up seeing like a lot of different cultures and different art. And I think that always ended up influencing me later on, just being exposed to Korea, Japan, Thailand. I went to like Europe with my mom when she was there. And so I got to see like France and England, and I went to the Louvre and all this stuff. So I got to see like stuff in person. Like I remember being kind of, no offense to the Mona Lisa, but I ended up being kind of unimpressed because it was so small. I thought it was gonna be like huge. I was 14. I thought it was gonna be like this huge like painting, like wow. And it's like this little tiny like painting behind like a like piece of acrylic or something to protect it from like getting, shot or someone throwing something on it. And I was just like, is this it? It's just I hyped it up so much in my head. I kind of like had to let down, but it was still cool to see it and see all the other stuff that was there. And I just think that I was like, wow, like people like made this, like people, someone like painted this or sculpted this, and I was like, I like this kind of stuff. But I think that because my mom was, I consider her to say like one of the most successful, awesome, cool people I know, because she works in humanitarian work and in aid. And so I kind of always, I think, told myself like I have to do something, impressive. I have to be like a lawyer. And I for a long time I said like, oh, I'm going to be a lawyer. And so I think everyone just kind of was expecting like, okay, well, she's going to go to school and she's going to go to law school. But as we as we're sitting here, we know that didn't happen. But I ended up going to school for business. My mom and I had this terrible fight that we don't talk about now, but we had this terrible fight where I was like, I want to be a chef. It's so funny now. It's not funny. But I was just like, this is my dream. I watched like a ton of HGTV and like Food Network growing up. So I think I just kind of was influenced by like, you know, this type of, it's not reality TV, but just kind of like those types of shows. And so I was like, I could do this. I could cook. And I love to cook. I cooked growing up. And so I think I was like, this is a thing I enjoy. And so I can monetize it, which I think is a word we hear a lot now, but I genuinely felt that way. Like I can make money being a chef. So I was like, I'm not going to regular college. I'm not going to university. I'm going to go to like chef school. And I had gone through all of the process. I was like ready to sign up. The only thing that caught me was that I was 17 when I graduated from college or from high school. So I couldn't, sign up for any of the student loans and things by myself. So like I had to have my parents' permission. And my mom was like, no, you're going to 4-year college. Like there's no way. Like I don't care how you feel about it. You're going to 4-year college. So I kind of felt defeated going into college already. I was like, I don't know what I want to do. I had this plan. It was perfect in my head. It was perfect. I want to go be a chef. I was going to like get a food truck or something. I don't know. Food trucks were pretty big at that point. They were like at their height of like, you could get a truck and get a license and like you can make your dream come true kind of thing. And so I think like in my head, I had the perfect plan. It was foolproof. This could have been me. But I ended up having to go to regular college. And I say regular because she wanted me to go to like Stanford or something. She was like, you have the grades. There's no reason for you not to go to like an Ivy League school, especially if you want to be a lawyer. This is the type of stuff that, you should be thinking about. And I was like, nah, I'm just going to go to like state school. I ended up going to UTA and I don't regret it to this day. Mav up. I loved it. It was a great experience. But I definitely think that at the time I was just like, I'm going to go with the thing that doesn't leave me in a ton of debt. And especially since I don't know what I want to do anymore because, my life plan has been ruined now, I'm just going to go for business. I didn't like it. I think that there's definitely like a mix of people in the business program, people who have like, I'm doing this because I want to have a business. And then there's people like me who are like, I'm doing business because I don't know what else to do. I was still kind of like an overachiever type. Like I went to all my classes, I had a job, I was in charity programs and stuff like that because I've been doing that my whole life because my mom worked for UNICEF. So I thought charity is one of the main things that you should be doing if you have the time and ability to. So I was very active. I just didn't enjoy my major. I somehow, to this day, I don't remember what happened. I can't remember if it was like an on-campus like art sale or like an art show or something that happened on campus, but I just found myself surrounded by people who are selling art or showing their art. And I was just asking people, what is it? Like, are you just selling stuff or do you go to school here? Or like, what's going on? And I found out about the art program and I was, oh my gosh, this is it. Like, duh, I should be in the art program. And so I, at the time had changed majors a couple of times. I think in biology. And I think I had told my grandma to like, I'm just gonna be a doctor. I don't know like what it was, or I was just like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. So I'm just gonna do like the most complicated thing I could think of, which was like biology and stuff. And it was fine. The tests were not great, but I understood everything. Like I taught the study groups. So like I didn't have a problem with it, but I was just like, it's just not for me. You can do something and be okay with it or be good at it. And it still doesn't, make your heart, beat. You don't enjoy it, And so I felt like when I was in the building, the art building, I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. This makes so much sense. And I didn't tell anyone that I changed to art, which it's funny now, like thinking about like you just made this whole life change and you didn't tell your mom or your grandparents or anyone. You just told your roommate, I'm an art major now. And they were like, what? And my roommate at the time genuinely was like, well, I thought you were going to go pre-med. And I was like, I changed my mind. It's just such a stark difference from being like, I'm going to be a doctor to I'm going to be an artist. But I didn't feel any like issue with it. But I knew that my family genuinely were like, you need to kind of set yourself up to be successful in the long run. And I mean, unfortunately, I think that I never quite lived down the decision with my family. I got a text literally yesterday from my grandmother saying, it's not too late to go to law school. If you wanted to, you can do it. And I was just like, I mean, it's not too late. You know, a lot of people, you can go to law school with any degree as your base. And I was just like, why don't you believe in me still? I've already made it. For a lot of people, I've done it. And so it's just like, all right, maybe she just doesn't quite understand because you know she is a little older. She's in her 70s. So I think especially at the time that she came from, especially as a black person, a woman of color, there's definitely not a lot of people or anyone in her generation that she knew, and especially not in our family and our, you know, the area that she grew up in, where they were like, yeah, you can be an artist and be successful. Like you don't have to, you know, necessarily struggle for meal to meal, etc. I think that for her, it's just too far of a departure from her reality for her to understand, you know, that it's okay. Like that I'm okay. And so I think she just worries. I'm sure if I told her like, hey, that like really hurt when you said that, she'd probably be like, oh, I'm sorry. Like I didn't mean it. But you know, she's very understanding, but I think that especially now that she's like older and she can't teach anymore and because she's past retirement age, that she's just like, you need to be secure when you get to my age, you need to have retirement and all that stuff. And well, I won't say that I have like my retirement plan figured out. I think most artists probably don't have like a solid retirement plan figured out. I think that my retirement plan is like either the world is gonna blow up by then, so I won't have to worry about it, or I'll have something figured out. So I'm not too worried. But back to the story. I changed majors, didn't tell anyone until I was already in it. I think I told them like maybe a year later. And it just felt right. Like I enjoyed all my classes. I was super engaged. I think that my kind of work ethic that I kind of already had, plus the opportunity to create things and like think about problems. So I'm a problem solver. I was just like, this is great. This is like the perfect marriage of, you know, problem solving and creativity is designed for me. And so I was just like, I'm in heaven. I don't need to change anything. I ended up adding into like my degree. I ended up in printmaking. It was a ton of fun. I liked making things by hand. And so I was like in screen printing, letterpress printing, all these types of print because I kind of became like a print major technically. And I'm sad now. I was thinking about it. I was like, I should get back into that. I'm going to be 29 this year. So I'm like almost 30. And I'm just like, maybe I should return to my roots. I don't know if it's just part of getting older. You're like, I miss the things I used to do when I was in college. But I was just like, it was a ton of fun. And I always tell people, like, if you want to be an artist, you don't have to, you know, get your degree in art. Like you can become an artist from any point in your life at any age with, you know, whatever you got. But I would definitely never exchange the experiences that I got in college for anything. I learned so much, and a lot of it was practical things, which is what you tend to learn in college is, you know, how to do something and how to apply those things. But I also met so many cool people. All of my, you know, internships and things like that definitely impacted me permanently in a way that I can say, like, I know people who are like, oh, I went to college and I don't remember anything. I'm like, no, I remember. Those last 2 years that I had of college were life changing, truly. And then my life changed again. I graduated somehow only a semester behind of my original, you know, set date, which I don't recommend people taking, 13 classes in a semester. Almost died, I think, from when I came home from class and I had like my job and I was like, I'll take a nap and I'll just like cook an egg in there. And I fell asleep with the stove on and literally almost set the whole apartment on fire. So don't do it, guys. If you just graduate a little bit later, don't push it too hard. But I graduated. I was so happy with like my degree. And then I couldn't get a job, which is not, the most uncommon story, but I definitely felt like, oh my God, I changed majors and I was so sure that, this was my life calling and blah, 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 and I can't find a job. So I was freaking out. I was freaking out. And I think it was hard for me to even like talk to my parents and my grandparents about it because I was like, I failed. I graduated from college and I couldn't find a job. And I mean, it had only been maybe a month or two. It wasn't even that long, but I was genuinely freaking out. Like I had a great GPA. I was super active. I had like one of the nicest resumes you would ever think, well designed. All my professors, everyone was like, you're great. You're going to do great. Da, da, da. And then I couldn't find a job. So I was freaking out. I ended up getting like a temporary job at a daycare, which was not for me. I'm used to being around kids because my grandmother was an educator. So I was kind of used to being around kids, but they were usually much older, not several infants at a time. Being around 5 and 6 infants at one time was like a little bit much for me. But I got a call from this place who shall not be named. But I got a call and I was like, I don't care what the job is. If it's something in design or art or whatever, I will 100% take that job. I don't care. Like what they say to me, you have to, you don't get to sleep. I don't care. I'm here. So I went and did the interview. I was nervous that I bombed it, but this place, they hired me. I show up day one and I think I was there for about 3 years after I graduated. So it was quite an extended period of time. And when I say like this place genuinely changed the way that I viewed art. Because the way that I had always thought of art was you have an idea or you have something that you want to express and you draw it or you make it, whatever. And that's kind of the end. I didn't really think about, are you designing necessarily this or making this for anything other than like maybe some branding stuff or I guess like visual identity stuff. But I was just like, yeah, like you can sell the design that you make, whether it's a logo or something like that, but not necessarily you can create a product. And this place introduced me to the idea that you can create products for people. Some of it more frivolous than others, for sure, but some of it can be like genuinely stuff that people really like and they want to wear, or they want to, it represents something that's important to them. And I basically learned everything that I know now about analyzing market trends, product design, understanding customers and customers' needs, and how to present your ideas to like other people. All of this stuff is, while it can be stuff that you like come across in college, again, I felt like college was teaching you like, here's how you use Photoshop, here's how you use Illustrator. These are, ways to think about, icon design and stuff like that. This place was a place that created merchandise. And I just had never come across the idea, even like, yeah, all that stuff you see in the store for your favorite, brand or your favorite fandom, whether it's Star Wars or Disney or anything, someone has to make that stuff. It doesn't just come out of nowhere. And I think it was really hard for me at first to kind of reconcile like, oh, so I have to take a property, whatever property, and I have to make something that people will want, right? And so for me, that was like kind of a little bit of a learning hill at first. It was like, all right, so I have all this artwork. Yeah. And you can create artwork if you need to. Okay. But then that has to go through a separate approval process because the property has to approve the artwork to make sure that it aligns with their brand and their brand guidelines and things that I think people don't even consider now and they see merchandise in stores. It's like, oh yeah, it's just this thing. It's just art. And it's like, no, someone had to make that. It had to get approved by their licensing and marketing team. And then that has to go into a database. And then companies that have the rights to that, property get to go in and pick the art that they want. Some of it gets locked behind, when does the movie or whatever it is release. Sometimes it's locked behind, well, you have the rights to make hats, but you don't have the rights to make t-shirts. And, there's so much that goes into just merchandise, like official merchandise that I had never seen. I didn't realize how much paperwork I would end up doing in a design job, but it was like some companies that I worked for, you have to submit each idea and then you had to explain why. You had to provide the Pantone colors and then you had to, and I get explaining why. You want to make sure it's relevant. You're not just like putting anything. And I think that sort of, I don't know if it's like just an ethos, just a way of thinking about, well, why is it made in this way? Kind of ended up carrying over with after I left that company. Was like, it is important to think about why we make things the way we do and how are people going to be using and engaging with the product that you make. And so it's some of the lessons were definitely hard and kind of uncomfortable. When you get a rejection on something, it's hard to not take it personally. It's like, yeah, well, I thought it was cool and I think it's relevant. And they're like, no, you can't do this. Some companies are definitely nicer than others. I think one of my favorite feedback that I've ever got, they said, we understand why you did this and it's very cute, but unfortunately we can't approve it because of the reason that they gave. And they're like, but we hope you keep making very cute things for us. And I was like, that's the politest no I've ever gotten. They're like, we don't want to hurt your feelings, but we can't approve this. But I don't know. I think that company, it taught me a lot. Genuinely, I can't say basically like why I ended up leaving, but when I did leave, I decided, I want to continue to make things. And I had been making things kind of on the side. I had started my business basically right after I graduated and like got my temporary job. I had started my business. It went by many names. I think I started off with like, I can't even remember. I know one of them was like Sugar Plum something because I really liked the Nutcracker growing up. I had a lot of names that just didn't feel right and ended up changing a couple of times and the logo changed a million times before we got like where we are now. But I think that for me, it was like I need to be able to try to provide for myself kind of on the side since I can't, I couldn't find a job at the time. And I had some artwork still from college that I was like, well, maybe someone will buy this. Like, I don't know. I ended up in a show. I can't remember what the name is now to this day. No, wait, it was called Decent Market. And they still run them, I think. But Decent Market started up in like 2018. And I went to the first one. I met some people that I still know to this day that are still selling things at this market. And I didn't even have a tablecloth. I had like a couple of prints that I just had like laid flat on the table. And I think I like made a sticker. And I was just like, this is what I got, like, please buy it. And so, I mean, I sold some stuff and I was just like, wow, like people like my stuff, even though like in my head, I was like, I don't know if I would buy this, but like clearly people are interested in it. So I was like, okay, maybe I could keep it going. And so I kept drawing and I think I was like gifted an iPad from my mom or something. And so I was like drawing on the iPad. Procreate had like just come out. So it was like a huge, like everyone was on Procreate and it was like, you can do so much. And like brushes were becoming a huge thing. And they're like, you don't know how to draw this? There's a brush for that. So everyone was like trying out new brushes and stuff. I was like, okay, wait, I just remembered. The first name I went with was Wild Wild Goods. I think it's still on Etsy. I don't know. But I was like really into Western. So I'm based in Texas. So I was really into like the Western thing and kind of like this Western sort of witchy thing I had like mixed up together. It was pretty cool. It was like, I felt it was kind of unique, but I made my first pen through, I think they were called Night Owl Press. I made my first enamel pen through them. They had like a third party sort of thing where they're like, if you give us your design, we will find, a manufacturer for it and then we'll grade it and we'll send it to you. So it was kind of a hands-off sort of thing, which honestly, I recommend to anyone if you do not know how to make something, find someone who does and who offers that as a service and be like, okay, it may cost a little bit more upfront, obviously, because you're going through a third party, but you get kind of an idea of the process, which is the name of the game in merchandise making. If you don't know how to make something, you need to become friends with or find someone who does. So I made my first pin. I had it was like a glow in the dark cat skull thing. It was pretty cool. I think I found one the other day. I was like, oh my gosh, the first one, the very beginning. It's very cool to kind of have like that sort of flashback of like, yeah, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just like, art, throwing it at the wall. Do you guys like this? Yep. And then I like made a thing out of it. So I did a couple of shows. I was literally, if you would let me set up a table, I got one of those 6-foot tables from Walmart. If you would let me sell at your event, I was there. I was in like breweries. I think it was like actually just a regular nightclub at one point. And then I sold out at like a record store. There was a few places where I was just like, if I can set up my table, I'll be there. If you're hosting an event and you're allowing people to sell, I will 100% be there with like whatever I had. And for a while, that was, fine. I think I got like a printer and like a Cricut and all that stuff. I found out I hated making stickers myself. And so I was just like, okay, never mind. And so I was like, I don't think I could be like one of those people that does everything themselves. It's just not possible for me. And I don't enjoy that particular process. And so I started researching like, how do you make things? Like, I know a general idea because I started working at my job and I was like, well, we talk to manufacturers about like how you make stuff, but how do you find manufacturers? And so I started talking to people at my job of like, yeah, like this is all really cool how we make stuff, like if I ever wanted to like make something like this, like how would I even go about it? And people were like, oh, you'd use Alibaba. And so that for me was like, okay, so you're telling me if I have the ability to design something and just like the money, right? I can make basically anything. Like it was the biggest like eye-opening situation for me ever. I was like, I can just find someone to make it. Like, and I'm not talking like, oh, like someone who makes t-shirts. Like, yeah, they make t-shirts, but enamel pins, stickers, keychains of different kinds, rubber, acrylic. You can make those freaking light up lamps. There's people who can make vinyl toys, which is obviously how people get into designer con. And someone's making, the vinyl toys. There's just so many things that I was like, I had no idea that you just have to find, a manufacturer for this. I was used to, press shops and screen printing shops, having like, okay, yeah, if you need someone to make like 10 t-shirts, 100 t-shirts, a couple hundred t-shirts even. There's obviously places that, can do that where it could just be one person, but these are huge, factories that end up making these things. And I was just like, Alibaba. Okay, I'm writing that down. Thank you very much for this like little tidbit of information. And so from there, I had been posting on Instagram for quite a while. I wasn't that big on Twitter, but Instagram was for photos at the time. It's evolved now because, the TikTok competition, but at the time, Instagram was for photos and only photos. And so I would just, draw a thing, post it, see how people liked it. If some people liked it, I'd be like, would you guys be interested in like a sticker maybe? Question mark. And so I would just, kind of get a feeling. But I mean, we do it now still. And I think that most creatives, if they're in that merch making space, you're kind of always testing the metal of like, would you guys want this? Do you like this? Are you interested in this? For pretty much everything. There's not a whole lot of stuff that I would make confidently without, having some sort of audience backup of we want this, like we're interested. But it was still kind of new at the time. Even Instagram stories, like they have like polls and stuff now. Like even on posts now they have polls. That was not a thing when when I was getting started on Instagram. It was like, yeah, I don't know. I'm asking the question and maybe you guys are commenting. People would DM me like, oh, this looks cool. Like this would be great. But I just started off with like, zero. I started at zero like everyone else. And I had my friends on there and some family on there. And I don't know like how easy or hard it is now if I was to start from zero again. Like I feel like now, especially after COVID, everyone kind of, exploded in creativity, in the area of creativity. And it's great that we have just more artists out there, people who are like, I had never really had the time before because, I had to drive, I had to commute, and I came home and I was too tired to do anything. But work from home really changed the Instagram landscape for creatives, I think. At least from what I saw. There's people that I literally never heard of before 2020 who now have like hundreds of thousands of followers. I'm just like, where did you come from? And they're like, I just had a little bit more time to put in that creative energy. And so when I started posting and like traveling a lot, and Texas is like, I feel like is unique in that we have so many events. There's something literally every week, every weekend that you could go and vend at if you wanted to. And so we have a lot of like food festivals and stuff like that that we sometimes like end up going to. And we have like a huge, base for Japanese culture, Korean culture. And so even Chinese New Year, I think I saw people posting in like every single location. They're like, we're here, we're selling, like we have like all this stuff. And obviously having stuff that's relevant to whatever season is a great boost. I always tell people like, do your marketing research, make sure you're hitting those holidays. But when I started on Instagram and like I started promoting myself at these events and things like that, I don't think I would have ever thought that I'd end up here for sure. I don't think I would have thought like you make bags now and plushies and hats and stuff like that. I just never would have thought that it would have evolved this far. I think at best I was like, well, I have like a couple of pin designs. Whereas now I'm like, I make pin collections. You can get all 20 if you want of this one, set of things. And so I think that at the job that I was at, because it was definitely one of those fast-paced environments, things were very fast-paced there. Sometimes we had to have presentations that had hundreds of items in there, and we'd only have like maybe a week to design everything. So I kind of got used to having to work quickly to turn around things. So when there would be trends on Instagram or whatever, even if I didn't have anything, I could turn around something pretty quickly in like a couple of hours if I had the time. So I think that part of my growth on Instagram, especially when it was so fresh for, this type of art, where it's kind of anime based or, cutesy type, kawaii type, I think that there just wasn't a ton of people making that kind of art at the time. And then there weren't a ton of people in Texas that were making that type of art at the time. A lot of times people would be like, oh, I thought you were based in California. And I was like, nope, I'm right here in Dallas this whole time. So I ended up growing pretty quickly on Instagram. It was like, I was like getting 1,000 followers a week kind of for a little while there. And it just like kept growing like exponentially. And some of the people who were at my job who kind of knew that I was doing this on the side were like, you are growing so fast. Like I've never seen like someone like that I know kind of grow at this pace. And I was thinking like, oh, but like it's a fluke kind of like it'll fall off. And this was like maybe at like 5,000 or something. I think we're at like 30,000 now, and everything on Instagram has changed. I should do reels. I know what I need to do, but I don't want to do reels. I don't like taking video. It's so much time and effort for editing and things like that. And I'm someone who likes to make the thing, not necessarily show the process of me making the thing. So I'm just like, look, guys, I made a thing. And everyone's like, but you didn't tell us that you were making that thing. And I was like, well, I made it. If you want it, let me know. But it still works because I think my followers know that I'm just not like the video type. But if you want to grow now on Instagram, make reels. That's where the money is at, where the growth is at. But I ended up doing my first project on Kickstarter, which I don't know like if I necessarily had any particular expectations for Kickstarter. Now it's like kind of one of our bread and butter, of the business. Like when we want to make something, we say like, okay, guys, we're going to do a Kickstarter. We do a Kickstarter before we would do like a pre-order or anything like that. And it's just because, there's benefits to using Kickstarter since they have like their own sort of search system. And, if you backed this type of project before in the past, it gets auto recommended to them. Now, a lot of people are moving to BackerKit. And so I see a lot of BackerKit projects now. And so it's good that, good to give Kickstarter some competition. I'll be trying out BackerKit as well. But I did my first one. It failed. I think that it's always interesting now talking to people and especially talking to my friends who think about, I want to get into this business and I want to make merch and, I like making art, but I just, don't know how to fund it. And I can do Kickstarter like you because, you have, hundreds of backers and blah, blah, blah. And I always like to pull up the link and show them my first Kickstarter. And I'm like, yeah, we didn't make funding. I was like, I didn't even get to fund one pin, much less, what we do now where we're making bags and things like that. I was like, you have to start, somewhere. And I think especially now with the way that we record everything and we put a lot of effort into showing how much goes behind the art, it can be kind of intimidating to say you might fail. It may not work out. And it doesn't mean, give up, but it definitely means that, it just may not work out the way that you think. And I know people, I won't say anyone's names, obviously, but I know people who have more followers than me, way more. And they've tried to make projects that just don't follow through. Like they just don't get the funding. And so it's not always even necessarily a matter of follower amount versus, how many people are actually spending the money. And I tell people that all the time too, for me, even though I may have, tens of thousands of followers, it doesn't mean I have, tens of thousands of dollars every month. It's not the same. They're not equal. But I think that it is important to build an audience. Then there is an audience for whatever your artwork is. There's someone out there who would be interested in that. And so I feel that it's okay to fail. And I know we hear that a lot, but genuinely, my first Kickstarter absolutely tanked versus my most successful Kickstarter did around 60K. So I think that if you put it in perspective of like, when you start out, you have to be realistic about your expectations and not take it too hard if it doesn't do that well, but also don't like overcommit, make that first Kickstarter for one thing, I want to make this one item, not necessarily I want to make, 10 or 20, which is what I did. My second Kickstarter did a little better. I think I started to feel that it wasn't necessarily like, wow, I can live off of this, but it was like, I can continue to make more. I think I was kind of worried since, my first event, I had like, no tablecloth. I had one item. I eventually made it to 2 pins, but that was like about it. And so at that point, I was thinking about, even if I'm at these events, I have to have something to sell. I need inventory. And so I think that I was starting without knowing what I was thinking about. I was thinking like, I need things to sell. So like, what's popular? What should I be making? What are people buying? What do I buy? And so I continued to make, Kickstarters and just watch trends and watch what people were, making and like talking about or saying that they wanted. And then making friends who were in the area that I wanted to be in. I think that one of the most enjoyable, I was saying it sarcastically, the most enjoyable thing for me is when people say, who makes your plushes? I was just like, huh? I was like, who are you? And not a hello first, like something. I think it's just an interesting kind of place to be in where you have to, for me, I like to, buy an item. And if I like to look at the construction, sometimes I'll buy two if I want to take something apart and see, like, well, how are they making this? I'm like a true analyst, I think, in that I like to know how a thing is made, especially if I like it. And so I was interested in making Ita bags, but I didn't really know that much about them. I'd only been making pins for maybe a year at that point. So I was like, I'll just check out like what's out there. And at the time, definitely not now. Now it's like it's an entire market. Ita bags is like there's like Lamborghini and Porsche versions, to Nissan versions. Like you have, and I drive a Nissan, so it's not a dig to Nissan, but it's just one of those things where it's like I went out and bought stuff, and I was like, these are not great. Like the average Ita bag at that point was just not great, and I was like, I want to design one, but I want it to be cool. Obviously, I don't want it to be, something that I wouldn't be caught using or something that I wouldn't like feel comfortable putting my name on, which is always, one of my favorite compliments we get is, oh, this is so well made. And I just really like that because I'm such a stickler for quality for things that I buy for myself. So I definitely wouldn't want to put anything out there that doesn't meet, my own standard. And so I made my first Ita bag. I found a manufacturer. Someone who I was friends with was like, oh, like you seem like you have an idea, but I was like, yeah, but I don't know anyone who can make it. And they were like, here, use mine. Use my manufacturer. And I was like, oh, okay. Thank you. Which is why I say make friends. Most people, if you're friends with them, they won't hold on to, that kind of information. I don't know a lot of people, in this area that gatekeep in that way. I think that there's been like kind of issues in the past where people will say, well, you should just give out your information for free, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, I don't think it's necessarily like a for free thing. I just think it's like obviously I tell my friends the good places to eat. And it's not that I wouldn't tell a stranger, like, go check out that place, but it just doesn't come up in conversation unless you directly ask, And so I made the first Ita bag. I made the sample, which part of product making, make a sample. Always make a sample. I know that it's expensive. It is not cheap to make, samples of, different things. Some stuff is obviously cheaper than others, but bags and things like that, like it's not like a cheap expenditure. I've thought of even trying to figure out a program for people if they want to make an Ita bag that I would sponsor like their sample creation, like pick someone and be like, all right, I like your idea. You won. Let's make that, let's make it happen, because that was like the first kind of hill for me, because I was like, oh, it's going to cost a couple $100s to make a sample. Not even like make the whole, like just make a sample. That I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't know if I can do this. This is starting to get expensive. And the whole thing of you have to have money to make money, it rang true that day very loudly for me. And I was just like, well, I believe in the design. I think it's cool. Like, I'm just going to make like the first one. I have like it's almost a bad habit at this point where I'm like, I can make this in this color, and then I can make 20 colors of the same thing. And I think it's just part of the ideation process that I picked up from my old job, where it's like you need to have multiple choices for people to pick from, because you might have a customer who likes black and red, but you'll have a customer who likes black and pink or black and blue or black and yellow. And while that's not wrong, it's still expensive. So I made the first one. I took a picture. I posted it on Twitter and Instagram. I was trying to grow Twitter at the time. I posted on Twitter. It blew up on Twitter. And this is the Maneki Neko Ita bag. It just exploded on Twitter. It got, the way the Twitter works and the reposting and stuff is very conducive to growth. Like more eyes can at least get on your project, even if it's not the same as obviously people saying, yes, I'll buy this. It's people remember seeing things. And even if they don't like it, they may know someone who would. And so they'd send it to. I send stuff to people all the time. That's how you know that I love you, is if I'm like, hey, I saw this and I think you like it. So I think that it just happened to be a mix, obviously, of hard work and luck that we ended up just blowing up the way that we did. And that was like my first really big Kickstarter. That was the first time I thought, maybe I could live off of this. Like, maybe not fully, but like this is starting to seem closer to like a viable business now. It's not like, little numbers anymore. I made that. And not too long after that, I attended my first anime convention. Before it was breweries, random art shows, all this stuff. I ended up splitting a table with a coworker, surprisingly, with a coworker at like my 9 to 5 job at this anime convention. And I had like nothing anime, I don't think. Nothing I had was relevant to the event, but I had some cute stuff. I had some cute animals. I always end up drawing animals and stuff, and mythology stuff always piques my interest. So I have stuff like that. And I had like the bags and stuff like that. So it was like adjacent, it was like next door to anime. But I think actually made decent money. And I was shocked. I was genuinely like, I didn't realize that people came to events like this. I think I just had genuinely no idea what a convention even was at that point. Like, I didn't grow up going to any kind of events like that were that massive, where it's like thousands of people in attendance. And so I think that for me, it was genuinely eye-opening of like, hold on. So you're telling me that I just get to set up and thousands of people are going to walk by, and I don't have to get everybody. Right? I mean, that'd be great, but I think obviously unrealistic. I was like, I just need like 30, 40, 50 people to come buy something at my table. And we started really getting into like the data of it at the time, where it was like the amount of, and I always tell people, check your overhead. One of my favorite conversations to have with new artists who come up and they're like, I've been a fan of you, blah, blah, blah. I started doing events. What should I be thinking about? Number one, what is your overhead? How much is it costing you to attend that event to sell? How much can you make? It's uncomfortable conversations, obviously, because people want to. You just want to go and like have fun, but it's like if you start thinking about it legitimately, about I want to sell art for a living, you can't just do it, for funsies. You have to think about the numbers and the bottom line, which is like not fun speak. I'll move on, but it is important. So I started attending events, conventions specifically. That ended up changing a lot for me. Obviously, now I attend, like, I got into Anime Expo, which was huge, a huge event. And then I, was in Designer Con, which was a huge dream of mine. I cried legitimately when I got the acceptance, because DesignerCon was something that I had known about since college. Vinyl toys kind of area was always something that I was interested in, but I didn't really have an idea of like how that kind of area worked. I ended up making a plush before I made a vinyl toy. Somehow I always wanted to make a vinyl toy, but I did end up making the plush first. I do want to eventually circle back and make a vinyl toy. Hopefully, maybe in time for the next time I attend DesignerCon, I will actually have a vinyl toy. But it was very like surreal kind of. I was like, oh, okay, I'm here. I've done it. This was like one of the main like pillars of, I want to do this thing. I want to go and feel proud about the work that I'm presenting. I want to meet some of my heroes, which I did. I had cried. They were very gracious about it, but I was just like, I'm here. Like, I'm meeting the people who, inspired me in college even. Like, so it was like a full circle kind of thing. And I was just like walking around in tears, like, here, hold this thing that I bought from my favorite artist. I'm just gonna go cry over here in the corner. It was a ton of fun. Super, super surreal. Now we're, continuing to grow, hoping to expand into more item types as I learn, how to make more things, which is, the fun part of this. But I think that now, especially for people who are coming in and they, I think that now with like AI, unfortunately, I think is discouraging a lot of people. I was discouraged. I would say I was genuinely depressed for a good month there when AI started coming out. People were like, you're not needed anymore. We don't need artists and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, there's no way you can think that this is going to replace the human creativity that comes into designing these kinds of things, like these items. I was like, sure, you could put, keywords in and blah, 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 and you come up with something. I was like, but it's not the same as creating something with heart, and intention. Yeah. Especially in product design, when I make something, I genuinely think about how are you interacting with it? Is this uncomfortable? Is this like length good? All of these things. And when we do a project, I ask people, please send me feedback. I want to know how you're interacting with this. If anything is awkward or feels weird or whatever, please tell me. And that's important to me. And I think that it's kind of the missing piece in AI, I think, is that it doesn't have the true human interaction. And so it is missing that on the back end when it delivers out like a product, quote unquote. The way that I interact with it, it's missing like the feel, like, like the emotion behind it. And so I feel that now, and a lot of my friends and people I talk to, like, they feel kind of discouraged because people are using AI and saying like, I'm an artist now. And I'm like, you could have been an artist if you can. I had an art teacher in high school. She said, if you can learn to sign your name, you can learn to draw. And I think that that is very needed. That way of thinking is very needed now. People can learn to draw, and you don't need AI for that. Even to draw in the way that you think is impossible, nothing's impossible. I would have never thought that I'd be here talking on a podcast about my origins. I was like, nothing is impossible. I would have never thought that I would have, 30,000 followers on Instagram, almost 20,000 on Twitter. I just genuinely would have never conceived of that many people ever being interested in even a single piece of my art. I made it was kind of a joke, which unfortunately the reality of the internet is that all of my best work, or I say best work, all of my most viral artwork tends to be something I made in jest, and it goes very well. And I'm like, guys, but this thing that I spent several hours on, why don't you care about that as much as this freaking meme that I made? But I made this, it's like a shrimp. Have you seen the "This is fine now" meme? I made it's like a shrimp in one image and the room is on fire, and then in the second image he's like a piece of tempura, and he said, "This is fine." I do enjoy the comments of people saying, "You should have said this is Brian," but I was like, I missed it. Sorry. But it's my most popular piece of artwork, and it's like at 1 million, views or something. I think on Instagram it's like almost 30,000 likes, which is like my most liked, it's almost as many followers as I have. And then there's like 1 million views on Twitter and like 50,000 likes or something. And I was just like, we're all not doing fine. That's why this resonates so much with everyone. But it's, for some reason, my most viral like piece of art. I think it's kind of funny, but the shrimp guy, he hasn't like made a reappearance. Everyone's like, you should make pins out of him and stuff. And I think I kind of grew a little resentful towards him because he became so popular. And I was just like, what about my other art guys? But yeah, I think that it's very interesting to see like where I ended up now, as from a kid who was selling signatures and snacks in school to now I sell like enamel pins and hats and bags and plushes. I just don't think that, as a kid, if anyone said, you're going to become like a great artist one day, like, you'll be a little popular and you'll sell stuff, I'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about, man. I'm just like, I'm just here reading my books and chilling. So I don't know. I don't know if I've covered everything. If I feel like I've hit the where we are now, where I was, how I got here.
No, Oni Cakes. Rick and I are in the background going, this is a great origin story, because it's like how you started, the things you've learned the way, the challenges. It's mind blowing.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm 50 plus years old, and my dad, every time he calls, which is every other day, still goes, I can't believe you make a living doing what you do. So,
it's like
to you.
the great expectations, of like your parents and stuff. I think I was definitely one of those kids that like you would have considered a quote unquote gifted child, gifted child syndrome. And so I think there was just a lot of expectations. I mean, I didn't get, money for good grades because it was expected that I get all A's kind of thing. And so
Yes.
I think that even now it's hard for me to celebrate the wins, or like the successes that I get, because I'm like, well, I should be doing that. I should be. This is expected, of myself, even though I'm realistically probably had no expectation of how much it would do or how well or how popular an item was. I think even with takoyaki, the first time I made it, I think I just didn't expect the amount of love for him. For me, it was like a silly little idea. It was like taco yaki is a food, and yeah is how you like the cat sound in Japanese. And I was like, I think this would be funny if I made a like an octopus cat, kind of thing. And I just thought it was, this could be great. And I mean, we struggled. If you make plush, just know that don't get discouraged with the first sample. It'll take a few. It'll take a few. And I mean, I could pull up the pictures now, but it went from like only having 2 tentacles somehow to like I think I had like 4. Like there was just a lot of in betweens, and I was like, okay, just give him 6. I think now like he has 6 tentacles. And it was a nice like round shape, and I was like, make him stuff him as much as you can. They were like, well, we don't want to stuff him too much. I was like, no, fill it to the brim. I was like, he needs to be a firm boy, okay? So don't get discouraged with your first sample. Keep going, persist and, make it the way that you want to. I think it's really easy to give up on your own vision as an artist. And I'm just like, don't give up. Stick with it. Even if you have to come back later, don't give up.
We found you because of him. So
Really?
I'm gonna tell you the story.
Okay.
So Rick and I had a booth next to each other. I don't remember who it was, but came over with the plushie,
Mhm.
and we were a whole section of friends, and we all know each other. We kind of hang out and do stuff together and kind of help designer con put together some stuff. Anyways, the person came over with it, and the whole group of us, like there's 20 of us at this place going, oh my God, this is the greatest thing. And Rick was going, I love it. I love it. I love like the wordplay and everything else. And everyone looked at me and they said, go. And I ran to your booth to get you for this podcast because you were an instant hit with all of us. Like
I'm
that
so
quickly.
glad. Wow. I just think I don't know. It's you never know what like your big idea or like what it could be. Like you really don't know. And so when I first like put the idea out there, I think I was hoping like to meet the minimum. So when you manufacture, you have like it's called an MOQ, minimum order quantity. And so I was like, if I can just get enough to hit that MOQ, which I think was like 100 or something, I was like, then I'm good. Like I will be satisfied if it only goes that far. And then when we did the first crowdfunding project, it was 1,000 pre-orders, which was like way more than I would have ever thought would be interested in like a singular item of mine. When you're in it for as long as I've been, which it hasn't been that long, it's like 5 or 6 years now, you kind of spread out things in your mind. You don't get the impact kind of wow, this many people like this thing that I made. And it just was mind blowing. Genuinely, I was like, I didn't think it was gonna be that impactful to people. And to this day, I get emails of people saying how much they love takoyaki and stuff, and it genuinely brings a tear to my eye. Like, I'm not known to be a big crier, so it quite literally does make me tear up a little bit to know that so many people like takoyaki, like my little pun that I made. And I'm glad that you guys found it so cute and that you wanted to talk to me because of it. So I'm takoyaki taking me places. Look at that. But yeah, you never know. You never know what'll get you a cool interview or what will become your bestseller. You have no idea. So make your art. Don't let anything discourage you. I think it's just a cool world that we live in, that we get to create things and have this kind of discussion about it.
100%. Brianna. So I can tell that you've taken some business classes because of the way that you're thinking about a lot of this, especially the seriousness in which you take it, because this is how you make a living. And how do you reconcile that difference between doing market research, looking at attendance and, psychographics or demographics of people going to conventions, where you're finding people, and the fact that you might just use something random and then it ends up being your biggest selling or, like the shrimp and all of the stories you've told us about how it sort of just hit with an audience that you didn't expect. So how do you reconcile between those two sides of things?
I think this is something I'm still learning because obviously there's informed decisions that you can make. I was just talking today about with my business partner, who I haven't mentioned yet, but I met her at my old job and I stole her. She's mine. But there's obvious things that you can look at, right? So like whatever movie is trending within your area of interest, obviously. So like if you're not into superhero stuff, don't worry about that. That's not relevant to you. Within the area of relevance to the things that you're making, there's obviously trends that are going to be apparent, like if the new show or anime or whatever is coming out, or there's other trends. I'm not even sure how to explain how I noticed this kind of stuff, but I'll explain to you. I predicted the cow trend becoming big because at the time I ended up making a lot of the specific milk products like strawberry milk, banana milk, and things like that that ended up in a lot of Western stores. I ended up working on that at my old job, and everyone was like, "Look, look, look," and I was like, "Milk's okay, but cows are cuter." And I think that if you just made like a pink cow, a pink strawberry milk cow, that kind of fits the same thing, and it's easier to work with. And to this day, I think cows are still pretty big, but it wasn't a thing. It literally happened in a trend meeting when I just presented it, and then now it's pretty much everywhere. And I don't know how I predicted capybaras are going to be next, and now capybaras are also starting to pop up everywhere. Sometimes it's like internet trends that just start off as memes and they become cutified, kawaiified by certain artists, and then because other people are watching those bigger artists like draw stuff, they start making it, and then it just kind of spreads throughout Artist Alley. If you go into Artist Alley now, there's gonna be like everyone has kind of the same thing. Like genuinely, everyone will have like Jujutsu Kaisen, or if you go to some of the oddities and curiosity show, almost everyone will have like a Mothman or something like that. Like there's obviously things that you can hit, trends that you can hit, that I would say, yeah, obviously you need to have these things covered in your base. But sometimes, I don't know, I just feel kind of wacky. I don't know what to explain. The shrimp thing, I genuinely was feeling kind of burnt out at the time. And a lot of the conversations that I was having with artists was about the algorithm. Because if you're going to be an artist in this century and you're posting on Instagram or Twitter or TikTok or wherever it is, there are algorithms and trends and things that you can or can't do to help push your artwork into the feed. And it's unfortunate that you have to pay attention that much to what like the algorithm quote unquote is. But a lot of people were feeling discouraged. They felt like, well, I'm posting this stuff and like even my own followers aren't seeing it. Like it's not getting pushed to them. They're not getting notified, even if they have notifications turned on, et cetera, et cetera. And so just a lot of people I was talking to were having like these issues. And so I felt like the sentiment was there. And so I drew the shrimp because that was kind of how I felt and how my friends were feeling, unfortunately. But I think that a lot of the stuff that I make in general, maybe not as much now, but definitely when I was getting started, I was very much thinking about like, how can I take the things that I'm interested in and make them not necessarily like profitable. It's not really where it's at. It was more like I was thinking about the things that I was interested in and saying, well, it doesn't exist in the way that I want it to exist. And so I don't know if there's other people that feel the same way and that, hey, this is a thing that I like, and I'll post it. And I'll just ask the question of like, would you guys be interested in this? Or Are you guys looking at this, interested in this? Is there something that you feel is missing? Some of the design edits that I've made over the years to things have always been, well, how do you guys feel about it? You guys being my audience, not you guys too. But I was just like asking the questions of, how do you feel about it? Or how would you even use this? Is this something that you want? I think that it's easy to think, well, if I'm making art, I'm making it for me. And I think that it's important to make art for yourself. And I think that sometimes you need to create for creation's sake. Like you just need to take the time, draw some stuff out. I draw stuff out, every now and then. And I'm like, well, that was nice for me, but I'm not posting that because it's not, relevant to my audience. And I don't think anyone would be interested in that thing. And some people would say, well, like, no, I'd be interested in whatever you put out. And it's like, I mean, maybe, but at the same time, we have to think about like the curated image of the brand, And at this point, I would consider like we clearly have like a tone that we have with all of our art. Even when I do like horror stuff, it's still like cutesy. It's like, oh, I did, Spook Kitties. And so it's like, oh, that's classic horror, but they're cats. So it's not as intimidating as, like actual Michael or Jason or anything. So I think that there's different ways that you can approach, trend watching and trend, keeping, quote unquote. But at the end of the day, you get to a point now where I feel like people kind of just expect that she's gonna put out another project with like 20 pins in there. Like I know it's coming. And so I think one of the fun things for me now, like when we fulfill projects, we just finished the Ogre Bag series that we did, and we're fulfilling things and seeing some of the same names pop up that have been here since like year one when I like first started. And I'm just like, you've really been here this whole time. And I just like don't even know, like I almost want to like email them and be like, hey, you don't like know me, but like you've been supporting me all this time. And I just want to thank you for like, the support. But I feel like I don't know what I would do with an email like that, so I'm not going to do that to anyone else. But I was just like, it's crazy to me that, I've gotten to a point where I feel comfortable with like making things, but I definitely don't make anything, I would say, out of character for the brand that we've built over these years. And so I have like you kind of get to a point where it's like, well, I know I'm going to X, Y, and Z event, and I know that this will be relevant for the time that is coming out. There's like things you can do, like obviously October you should have some Halloween stuff. Like, yeah, I don't know, things like that to me just kind of makes sense. I say that knowing like now, I probably wouldn't have considered it or thought about it before, but when you're at I almost said the name job, oh my gosh, at the company that I used to work at, we would have trend meetings. And so what we would do is we would go out into the mall, into the store, and we'd see, well, what do I see? So I'd be like, well, we see a lot of long sleeve t-shirts that are cut in this particular style or this kind of treatment, quote unquote. So like acid wash versus tie dye, for example, things like that. Looking at how things are like finished off. I see a lot of small bags. Everyone's getting small bags now. You probably have heard, especially with the way that TikTok is now with like the micro trends, be like, things are coquette now. Oh, we're doing mermaid core. Oh, we're doing this core. There's like another core every week. And at this point, it's so quick that no one can really keep up with it. So like you might as well do what you want. But trends are very real when it comes to how are people spending money. So 2020, people were not spending as much money, but they were spending slightly more like per person because they were at home more. So they weren't spending as much money on gas. And so they were like kind of like either saving that or they were like, well, I have like more money for a little treat. And I say a little treat. For me, that's like a sticker or a pin from someone that I like. So I think that, if you're kind of watching stuff like that, you can make informed decisions. Like last year, almost everyone I talked to, they said people are not buying the same. The economy is going down. We're in, I won't say a depression, but basically another Great Depression, is a recession, a la 2008, which I always tell people I was in the 8th grade. I had no idea. what was going on in 2008. Like it went straight over my head. My grandma was like, "Oh yeah, it was terrible. It was awful. Like no one was having a good time. There was not a lot of money to go around." So me paying attention to that, I'm like, okay, well, I definitely won't be making any like risky decisions, right? Because I need to make sure that whatever product we bring in, people are going to actually want to buy that product. And when you don't have a lot of extra money to go around, I have to really want that product in order for me to say, okay, I guess, I can, put the extra money towards that. And just part of the way that you do that is put your polls out there, ask people. I just put a question out because I wanted to do a restock of the shark bags. That was our most popular Ita bag. And I was like, hey guys, I'm thinking about doing this again. When feels more comfortable for you? Because I know that money's tight. So I'm not going to put pressure on, my audience and stuff and be like, hey guys, I want to make this thing, better pay up. Like, that's not very not very nice, very not very like responsible either. So it's like, hey guys, I want to get a feel for how are you feeling and when do you think you would want this by. I think that's the one thing afforded to smaller, artists and smaller creators that like bigger, like, and I don't mean bigger artists, like I mean like stores, like huge stores. They can't really do that. They can't ask their artists. They can't, have that one-on-one with the customer. And I say one-on-one. It's like one on a couple thousand with the customer and say, hey, like I want to do this thing and I know that you want this thing because you've been telling me and messaging me and DMing me saying, when are you bringing this back? And I just haven't set a date. So I feel, very blessed or lucky or whatever you want to call it, that I can ask people like, what do you want? What do you want me to draw? What do you want to see? And I think that that definitely influences the way that I make decisions now. It is the customer, but the fact that I can ask them directly makes quite the difference.
I love that. I mean, I think it's like it really just shows your level of awareness of that symbiotic relationship between a creator and their audience. And this has been super cool, Brianna. I mean, I love that. I feel this has been a nice product design masterclass episode.
Hopefully.
But unfortunately, due to time, we do need
Yeah.
to wrap up. And so I'd love to know, where can people find you?
All right. You can find me on Instagram at OniCakeCo. That's OniCakeCo. And I'm on Twitter, TikTok, the new thing, Blue Sky. I'm on all social media, basically. If there's someplace to post a picture, I'm there under that same handle. So please come and give me a follow, say hello, tell me that you found me from the Origins podcast. I'd really appreciate to hear from you.
This has been super fun. How we love to end the show is we always give our guests the final word. So anything on your brain, it can be about everything, anything, or nothing at all.
All right. If you are a young artist, a new artist, an older artist, I don't care where you are. If you're thinking about creating art, but you're feeling discouraged right now because of whatever it is, if it's low followers, your fear of failure, your idea that you don't have the ability to do anything, don't let that stop you. If you can sign your name, you can learn to draw. If you want to create something, do it. Don't let the idea of equipment, don't let the idea of skill, don't let the idea of audience, don't let any of that stop you. It can genuinely be therapeutic, life-changing, fun to just create something. So get out there and create something today.
Thank you for joining Rick and myself on another episode of Origins, A Creative Journey, a Designer Con production. Please like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, download and listen to us every place you get your favorite podcast. Follow us on Instagram at Origins Creative Journey, all one word. Drop us an email for thoughts, ideas, or maybe somebody you'd like us to interview at dconpodcast@gmail.com. And make sure you join us in Las Vegas for DesignerCon, North America's premier annual design convention. All the information can be found, including tickets, at designercon.com. Till then, enjoy your own creative journey.